The wedding cake was still warm when she made the vow. Tears streaming down her face, voice cracking, mascara streaking down her cheekbones in two perfect rivers, she looked me dead in the eye and said I was the only man she'd ever love. She said our 7 years had been the best years of her life. She said she'd marry me again every single lifetime if she got the chance. 4 hours later, while the reception was still pouring drinks and the band was still warming up, I was sitting in the back seat of our rented limo with my new wife's phone in my hand and a message on the screen that explained everything our entire 7-year relationship had never once explained. The message was short. 5 lines. Sent to a man named Lucas at 9:14 p.m. The exact minute she had been holding my hand at the altar saying, with her whole chest, I do. I married her at 29. Her name is Hannah Reeves. She is 31 now, or was as of last week. I will tell you everything about her before this story is over. Every detail she tried to hide, every lie she told me with a smile, every friend of hers who knew what she was doing and said nothing. But first I need to tell you what happened on the night I found that text, because that is the night the world I thought I was living in folded in half and set itself on fire. If you've just stumbled onto this channel, what I do here is tell stories about people like me and you, ordinary men and women who walked into a situation they thought was real and walked out of it broken. Some of these stories have endings where the person gets their revenge. Some don't. All of them are true, or as close to true as memory allows. I tell them because somebody told me once that the only way to make a wound stop hurting is to put it in a place where someone else can see it. I hope watching me bleed a little helps somebody out there who's bleeding too. Press subscribe before we go deeper. The bell. The like. All of it. And if you've ever found a text that ruined your life, put it in the comments. I read them. Some of them keep me up at night. Now, back to Hannah. We met in the spring of 2019. I was 23, fresh out of college with a degree in accounting, working my first real job at a mid-sized firm in Cleveland where I had grown up. She was a junior buyer at the same firm, in a different department, sitting 2 floors above me at a desk she had decorated with a small succulent plant and a framed photo of her cat, Mittens. I noticed her before she noticed me. There is no way around that. For about 3 months I watched her get into the elevator every morning at 8:47 a.m. in a cream-colored cardigan and reading glasses she wore on a chain around her neck. I memorized which floor she went to before I ever learned her name. Her name I learned from Keith, a guy on my team who had gone to high school with her. Keith said she was from a good family over in Lakewood. He said her father was an orthodontist and her mother ran a small flower shop out of their garage. He said she was smart, friendly, and absolutely, completely, unapproachably spoken for. She had a boyfriend. They had been together since college. The boyfriend's name was Lucas. I want you to remember that name. Lucas. We are going to come back to Lucas many times in this story. For the first 3 months I did nothing about Hannah. I watched her from a respectful distance the way you watch someone you have no business watching. I learned small things. She hated the coffee from the place on the corner but drank it anyway because it was fast. She tapped her left foot when she was concentrating on a spreadsheet. She always said good morning to the security guard, whose name was Reggie, and she always asked Reggie how his wife Beverly was doing. She remembered people's pets. She remembered people's kids. She remembered people's sick mothers. She was, in other words, the kind of person you fall in love with while you're trying not to, because she makes you feel seen without you doing anything at all. In October of 2019, 2 things happened. First, Hannah broke up with Lucas. I learned this through the office grapevine, which at any medium-sized firm is faster than the internet. According to Karen from Receiving, who according to Karen had heard it directly from Hannah herself, the breakup was complicated. Lucas had moved to Chicago for a job. Hannah didn't want to move. Lucas didn't want to stay. They had tried long distance for 6 months and it had dissolved, the way long distance always dissolves unless one of the 2 people involved is willing to give up everything they have built for the other person. Neither of them was. They split. Karen said Hannah had cried in the bathroom for a week. The second thing that happened was that I was asked by my team lead to take a meeting on Hannah's floor about a vendor dispute we were jointly working on. I walked into the conference room on the 4th of October 2019 with my printed reports and my little legal pad, and Hannah Reeves was sitting at the other end of the table. She introduced herself. She did not know my name. She shook my hand. Her hand was small and dry and warm. She said, "You're the guy who always says good morning to Reggie. I like you already." I am 34 years old as of last week, and I still remember exactly how she said that. I like you already. Like it was nothing. Like it was a fact about the weather. We dated for almost 2 years before I proposed. She was not the first person I had ever dated. I had been in 2 serious relationships before her. One in college, one right after. Both ended because, in retrospect, I was too easy. I bent. I performed. I tried to be the version of myself that the woman in front of me wanted me to be. I had not learned yet that you cannot love somebody else honestly until you have stopped auditioning for them. Hannah was different. She didn't audition me. She didn't test me. She didn't, in those first 6 months, ask me a single question about my income, my career plan, my investment portfolio, the size of my future house, or the brand of watch I was going to wear to her parents' anniversary dinner. She asked me about my mother, who had died when I was 16. She asked me about my brother, who was in prison for a DUI he had gotten at 22 and had never quite gotten out from under the weight of. She asked me whether I believed in God, and, when I told her I was not sure, she said, "That's okay too. We can figure that out together." She made me feel like I was a person being met, not a product being evaluated. And I could tell by the way she talked about other men, the way she rolled her eyes at the gym bros in the elevator, and the way she sighed at the slick finance guys who hit on her at work events, that she did not want a man who was trying to impress her. She wanted a man who was willing to be seen by her, even the ugly parts. I proposed on her birthday in 2021. I did it at the flower shop her mother ran out of the garage. I bought every single rose in the shop. There were 42 of them. I arranged them, badly, in a circle on the concrete floor of the garage, and I got down on one knee in the middle of them. Her mother cried. Her father, who I had not met until that day because I was too nervous, shook my hand and called me son and bought me a beer. Hannah said yes before I finished the question. She grabbed me by the collar and pulled me up and kissed me in front of her dad and her mother and the neighbor lady who had wandered over to ask what all the roses were for. We planned the wedding for 13 months. 13 months of venues and dresses and catering and invitations and seating charts and arguments about the song for the father-daughter dance. I did not care about any of it. I would have married her in a parking lot. She cared, and I let her care, because she had been waiting for this her whole life, and I was not going to take that from her by being cheap about flowers. The wedding was set for the 28th of September, 2024, at a small vineyard outside of Cleveland called Merrill Hill. It was the kind of place that shows up on wedding blogs and has a hashtag. There were old brick walls. There was a trellis covered in some kind of climbing flower I cannot remember the name of. There was a string quartet. There was a wine cellar we used for the rehearsal dinner. There was a lake nearby where the photos at sunset were going to be, we hoped, beautiful. This is the part of the story where I have to be honest with you. Leading up to the wedding, I had what I can only describe now as a feeling. Not a suspicion. Not a worry. A feeling. The kind you get when you're driving and your mind suddenly tells you, for no reason you can name, that you should slow down. I had it about a dozen times in the 6 months before the wedding. Little things. In April, 2 months after engagement, she came home from a work trip to Chicago and would not let me into her suitcase. She said there was a gift for my birthday she didn't want me to see yet. Fine. I accepted it. In June, we were at brunch with her friend group, the 4 women she had known since high school, and one of them, a woman named Marcy, made a comment about that guy from Chicago that landed weird. Marcy said it in passing, the way you mention an old acquaintance, but Hannah's whole body changed. She put her fork down. She looked at Marcy. She said, very calmly, we don't talk about him. Marcy apologized. The table moved on. I moved on. I should not have moved on. In July, I walked into the kitchen at 2 a.m. to get water and Hannah was on her phone in the dark. She put the phone face down on the counter when she heard me. She said she had been looking at wedding Pinterest boards. She said, I'm sorry, I can't sleep, I'm so excited. I kissed her on the forehead and went back to bed. I should not have gone back to bed. In August, she asked me not to look at her phone when she was in the shower. She said it was because she had a long thread of texts with her mother about the seating chart and she didn't want me to see the draft of her father's speech because she was worried it would ruin the surprise. I thought that was sweet. I am telling you this now because in a year I will look back on this and want to scream at myself. I should not have thought it was sweet. In September, 2 weeks before the wedding, she disappeared for an entire afternoon. She didn't answer her phone. I called her mother. Her mother said Hannah had gone to a fitting. I called the tailor. The tailor said Hannah hadn't been there. She came home at 6 p.m. smelling faintly of a men's cologne that was definitely not mine. She said she had been at a surprise birthday lunch for a coworker. She showed me a card. The card was signed HL. I asked who L was. She said, Lucas. You know, my old friend Lucas. We all chipped in. Lucas. I didn't push it. I want to be clear with you, sitting here 4 years later, I am not telling you I had no information. I am telling you I had information and I decided not to use it. I am telling you I had a feeling and I let the feeling die because I was afraid of what would happen if I followed it. This is what I want every man and woman watching this right now to understand. You are not stupid when you suspect something. You are not paranoid. You are not making it up. You are noticing. The bravest thing you can do is not pretend you didn't notice. I pretended. I let the love of my life walk down the aisle toward me with another man's cologne still on her wrist and I said, wow, you look beautiful. I want to tell you the wedding in detail because the wedding is where the lie was loudest. The morning of the wedding, I woke up at 5 a.m. and took a shower and put on my tux. I had my brother with me. We had a little bourbon at 7. He toasted me. He said, you found a good one, man. Don't screw it up. I believed him. My brother was right about a lot of things in his life. He was wrong about her. I needed him to have been right about her because I needed her to be right about me. That's how the trap works. You need the lie to be true more than the liar does. The ceremony started at 4 p.m. Merrow Hill was dressed in vines and lanterns. There were about 120 guests. Her parents. My dad. My Uncle Jack, who is the only father figure I have now that my mother is gone. Her 4 high school friends sat on the front row, Marcy, Heather, Becca, and Jenna. Lucas was not there. Lucas had not been invited. I knew this because Hannah had told me, in what I now understand was the first of many false narratives, that she didn't want there to be any weird energy between her and Lucas, because they had tried being friends after the breakup and it hadn't worked out. I respected it. I thought it was mature of her. I am not going to tell you what I think of it now. She walked down the aisle to an old Fleetwood Mac song her mother had picked. I can't even listen to that song anymore. I changed the ringtone on my phone that plays it. I can't tell you what it sounds like without crying. I am a 34-year-old man and I cannot listen to a Fleetwood Mac song without crying because of what that woman did to me, and I need you to know how deep a wound she carved in me so that you understand why I have spent the last year telling this story in pieces like a man picking glass out of his own chest. She was crying when she got to me. Genuinely crying. I keep going back to the question of whether those tears were real. I think they were. I think Hannah loved me when she married me. I think she was capable of loving me. I think that is the worst part of this entire story. She could love me and still lie to me. She could look me in the eye at an altar and tell me I was the one and then text another man 4 hours later telling him the opposite. People are not simple. People are not one thing. The person who destroyed me was the same person who rubbed my back when I had a migraine and remembered my mother's birthday every year with a card she had handwritten herself. I want you to feel the weight of that. I want you to feel it in your chest the way I feel it every night when I try to sleep. We did the vows. She had written her own. She read them out of a little notebook she had embroidered with our initials. She said I was the man who taught her what it felt like to be chosen. She said I had been her unexpected miracle, the best thing that had ever happened to her, the only person she had ever trusted with her whole heart. She said she was sorry for the years she had wasted on anyone who wasn't me. She said our children, we hadn't even decided on children yet, but she said our children, would be the luckiest people alive to have a father like me. I cried. I am not ashamed to admit it. I cried in front of 120 people because my wife-to-be was telling me, in her own handwriting, that I was the love of her life, and I believed her. We kissed. We walked back down the aisle. The string quartet played a different Fleetwood Mac song. I want to say her name one more time so you can hear how stupid I was. Her name was Hannah Reeves and I loved her more than I had loved anything in my life, and I married her on the 28th of September, 2024, and I did not know that she had another man in her phone telling her she was the love of his, that they had been saying that to each other for at least 6 months, possibly the entire 2 years we had been together, and that the only thing she was committing to at that altar was the version of me that didn't ask her questions. The reception was in the wine cellar. Her father gave a toast that made everybody cry. My brother gave a toast that made everybody laugh. She danced with her father. We did the first dance to a Ben Howard song she had picked. I held her close. She laid her head on my shoulder. She whispered in my ear that I was the man she had been waiting her whole life for, and I believed her again, because that is who I was at 29. A man who needed to believe her. Around 9 p.m., we stepped out of the reception for 5 minutes to take some sunset photos by the lake. The photographer was a woman named Elise who was professionally excellent and personally exhausting. She had us pose in 17 different ways. She had us tilt our chins. She had us laugh. She had us look serious. I was patient. Hannah was patient. I kept looking at Hannah and she kept looking at the lake, and I thought she was taking it in. I thought she was being present. I now know she was buying time. At 9:14 p.m., the exact time stamped on the message I'm about to tell you about, Hannah reached into her clutch for her phone. She said she was checking on her mother, who had a heart condition and was feeling tired. She said her mother had texted her that her chest was tight. She asked if I minded if she called her for 30 seconds. I said of course. I am telling you this with a steady voice right now, but I want you to know that my hands are not steady. My hands have not been steady since I opened that phone. She walked away. She walked to the side of the building, near the trellis with the climbing flowers. She stood with her back to me. Her head was bent over her phone. I assumed she was calling her mother. I took a sip of champagne. I watched Elise the photographer fiddle with her lens. I watched the sun go down over the lake. I was, at that exact moment, what I thought was the happiest man on earth. At 9:21 p.m., Hannah came back. She kissed me. She said her mother was fine, she had just needed a glass of water. She put her phone back in her clutch and put the clutch in her bag and said, "Let's go back in. I want to dance with you again." We went back in. We danced. We ate cake. We opened the garter. I did not, at any point during this entire evening, suspect that I had just been married to a woman who had, 7 minutes earlier, sent another man a message about how much she loved him. Here is the text. I am going to read it to you exactly as it appeared on her phone. I am going to read it to you exactly as I read it that night, sitting on the leather seat of a rented Lincoln MKT limousine that smelled like vanilla air freshener and stale champagne, on the drive from Marrow Hill Vineyard back to the hotel we had booked for the wedding night. I had her phone in my hand because she had fallen asleep on my shoulder. I had looked down at her phone because the screen was lighting up with notifications and I was trying to silence it for her. I was trying to be a good husband for the first 6 hours of my marriage. The text was from Lucas. It arrived at 9:08 p.m., 6 minutes before her own message. I read his first. It said, "Han. I'm at the airport. I just landed. I know you said not to come but I needed to see you. I couldn't let you marry him without telling you that I have never stopped loving you. If you want me to come to Marrow, give me the address. I'll come tonight. I'll come right now." And then her message, at 9:14 p.m. The smiley face. The lowercase letters. The casual, easy, intimate tone of someone who has been writing this man for years and has made themselves comfortable inside that relationship. It said, "Don't come. I made my choice. I love him. Tonight is mine and his and I need you to let me have this one night with him. After tonight we'll talk. Please. Don't come." That is what she said to her lover when he tried to break up her wedding. Don't come. Not I love you. Not I'm leaving him. Not it's over between us. Just, don't come. Tonight. Tonight is mine and his. As if I was a possession to be returned to him in the morning. As if I was a placeholder. As if she had rented me for wedding purposes and was telling Lucas when to pick me up. Wait, it gets worse. The next morning, I woke up in the hotel. I woke her up. I asked her to come outside with me, because I knew I could not have this conversation in a hotel room with bedhead and mascara from the night before and the soft intimacy of a room where she had slept in my arms. I asked her to come outside because I needed the distance of a sidewalk to say what I had to say. We sat on a bench by the hotel fountain. I handed her the phone. I told her what I had read. Her face did something I have never seen on any human face before. It went from asleep and soft to terror in about half a second. Not the terror of someone who got caught once. The terror of someone who got caught and knew that this was only the surface. She tried to deny it. She said Lucas was an old friend. She said the message was a misunderstanding. She said he was being dramatic. She said, I told him not to come because I knew he would make a scene and ruin the wedding. I was protecting you. She said, I love you. I chose you. She said, that message means nothing. She said a lot. She said a lot in a hurry. I did not yell. I want to be honest with you about that. I did not yell. I asked her 3 questions, quietly, calmly, in the voice of a man who had prepared no revenge and wanted only the truth. The first question was, how long has Lucas been back in your life? She said, 6 months. The second question was, when you went to Chicago in April, was that for him? She said, yes. The third question was, when you told me you loved me at the altar tonight, did you mean it? She did not answer that one. She looked at the fountain. She looked at her hands. She said, very quietly, I don't know. I don't know. She said I don't know. 3 weeks before, in her vows, she had told 120 people and God that I was the only person she had ever trusted with her whole heart. 3 hours before, on a dance floor, she had laid her head on my shoulder and told me I was the love of her life. And now, in the morning light of the day after my wedding, sitting next to a fountain with mascara still smudged under her eyes, she was telling me she didn't know if she loved me at all. I went back into the hotel. I packed my bag. I called my brother. I said, come get me. He drove an hour to come get me. He didn't ask questions until I was in the car. He looked at me. He said, what happened? And I said, she said I don't know. And he said, what? And I said, when I asked her if she meant it when she said she loved me, she said she didn't know. He turned the car around. He said, do you want me to go up there? I said no. I said, take me home. I am going to tell you, before this story goes any further, about Marcy. Marcy was Hannah's oldest friend. Marcy has known Hannah since elementary school. Marcy was the one who had made the comment about that guy from Chicago at brunch in June. When I got home from the wedding and spent the next 2 weeks in the kind of silence that some men understand and most women will never, I called Marcy. I called her because Marcy had been one of the bridesmaids, because Marcy had been at the altar, because Marcy had hugged me at the reception and told me I was the luckiest man in the world. I called Marcy on a Tuesday morning in October. I said, did you know? Marcy said, did I know what? I said, about Lucas. About Chicago. About the 6 months. About everything. There was a long silence. Then Marcy said, yes. Not sorry. Not surprised. Just, yes. I said, how long? She said, since June. I said, why didn't you tell me? Marcy said, because Hannah asked me not to. I sat down on the floor of my kitchen. I put my forehead on my knees. I said, anything else I should know? Marcy said, Heather, Becca, and Jenna all knew too. We all knew. We talked about it. Hannah told us she was in love with him and she was going to leave you before the wedding. None of us thought she would actually go through with the wedding. None of us thought she'd make it to the altar. I said, why? Marcy said, because she couldn't afford to break the deposit on the venue. I am going to let that sit with you for a moment. I want you to sit with it the way I sat with it on the kitchen floor. The reason my wife married me was the venue deposit. Let me tell you a few things about Lucas, because Lucas is the man I should be telling this story about. Lucas is 40. He lives in Chicago. He works in commercial real estate, the kind that pays more money than I have ever thought about money. He is a man, by most descriptions, that women like Hannah would consider a catch. He earns well. He dresses well. He drives a car Hannah had mentioned several times throughout our relationship as a car she would die for. He is the kind of man mothers introduce their daughters to. He is also, by most descriptions I have since collected, the kind of man who sleeps with women who are engaged to other men and calls it love. Hannah had told me during our relationship that Lucas was emotionally unavailable. She had told me he had commitment issues. She had told me, on at least 3 different occasions during arguments we had about my own insecurities, that at least Lucas was honest about not wanting to get married. She had been using him as my opposite. As the bad example. She had been telling me, every time I worried that I was not the man she deserved, that I was better than the man she had left. I now know that she had not left him. She had never left him. She had been texting him since 11 months into our relationship, which means she had been texting him for approximately 6 years by the time we reached the altar. Every fight we had about him, every single one, had been her lying to my face with the same vocabulary, the same tone, the same eye contact I had trusted. I want to take you back to specific moments in our relationship so you understand the pattern. Not so I can suffer in front of you. So that you can see the red flags in your own life and stop pretending they aren't there. There was the night, in February of 2023, when Hannah told me she had been offered a promotion at work that required her to travel to Chicago twice a month. She was excited. She said it was what she had been working toward for years. I was proud of her. I said, of course you should take it. She said, are you sure? I said, are you kidding me? Go. What I did not know then was that the promotion was a fiction. There was no new role at her firm that required Chicago travel. She had invented the entire structure to give herself 2 trips a month to the city where Lucas was living. I want you to imagine what it is like to discover that the conversations you had, the ones where you were proud of your wife, supportive of her career, generous with her independence, were all built on a lie she had constructed so she could be with another man. I want you to feel that. I want you to understand what that does to the part of your brain that is supposed to trust another human being for the rest of your life. It damages it in a way I cannot describe to you with words. It damages it the way a bone is damaged when it is broken and set wrong. The bone heals, sort of, but it is never quite right again. You feel the weather in it forever. There was the trip to Greece in the summer of 2023, with another couple. Hannah and I had what I now believe was our last genuinely happy week. We ate at outdoor restaurants. We drank wine. We lay on the beach and read the same novel out loud. We made love on a balcony overlooking the caldera, and I told her I wanted to have children with her. She cried. She said she wanted that too. She meant it. I think she meant it. That is what is destroying me. She meant it, and she was texting Lucas from the bathroom of our hotel that same week. There was the night we got engaged. I bought the ring in October of 2023, a 1.5 carat oval cut. I picked it up on a Friday and I had it in my pocket when she came home from work. I proposed in the kitchen because I couldn't wait. I got down on one knee right there next to the refrigerator. She laughed. She said yes. We called her parents. We called my brother. There was champagne. There was joy. And there was, somewhere in the background of that joy, the sound of her phone buzzing in her purse on the kitchen counter with messages from a man she had been seeing for years while telling me he was the worst mistake of her life. I cannot go through all of them. There were too many. There were dinners and movie nights and Sunday mornings in bed and the entire year we spent trying to get pregnant, which never worked, which we now think was because she was on birth control she had hidden in a drawer of her nightstand that I was not allowed to open because she said it was her private space, which I respected because I am a man who respects boundaries even when those boundaries are being used to keep a second life secret from me. I want to stop on the pregnancy thing for a moment because I need you to understand the depth of what she did to me. I am a man who wanted children. I am a man who sat with Hannah in 3 different fertility clinics. I am a man who held her hand while a woman named Dr. Patel explained hormone levels and follicle counts. I am a man who injected her with hormones every night for 4 months. I am a man who cried alone in my car after one of those appointments because the doctor had told us our chances were about 65%. I am a man who gave up a work trip to Tokyo because Hannah had an IUI scheduled on a Tuesday and I wanted to be in the room when it happened. I did the dishes. I made her tea. I went to every appointment. I held her hand. I said, whatever happens, we're going to be okay. I meant it. And the entire time, she was hiding a packet of birth control pills in her drawer, taking them on a schedule only she knew, making sure that we would never have a child because having a child with me would have tied her to me in a way that she could not undo, and she needed to be free to keep her options open. She needed to keep her options open because she was still deciding between me and a man named Lucas. I am not going to tell you what that did to me. I don't have the words. I have words for many things, but not for that. If you are a man who has ever tried to build a family with a woman, if you have ever cried in a parking lot because an embryo count came back lower than you had hoped, I need you to know that I see you. I see you because I was you. I am you. After the wedding night. After the discovery. After the conversation at the fountain. After the drive home. I did what I think most men in this situation do, which is that I tried to fix it. I tried to fix it because that's what we are taught to do. We are taught that if the relationship is broken it's our fault. We are taught that if she cheated it's because we weren't enough. We are taught that we are the variable in every equation. I called Hannah 2 days after the wedding. I said, I want to talk. I want to understand. She said, I want to talk too. Can you come over? I went over to her parents' house, where she was staying. Her mother had made us both coffee. Her father had shaken my hand at the door and said, we're so glad you two are working it out. Her father did not know. Her mother did not know. Or maybe her mother knew something. Hannah's mother had a way of looking at me that I now think was not motherly warmth but the look of a woman who knew her daughter was using her future son-in-law and was willing to let it happen because she liked having a son-in-law who made a good salary and asked her how her day was and remembered her birthday. We sat in her old bedroom. The bedroom she had grown up in. There was a stuffed bear on the bed. There were posters on the wall from college. There was a small wooden box on the dresser with her name and her graduating year engraved in the lid. She sat on the edge of the bed. I sat in the desk chair. I felt like I was 16 years old. I felt like I was a teenager sitting across from a girl whose father could come upstairs at any moment and tell me to leave. I said, "I need you to tell me the truth. All of it. If you tell me all of it, even if it's ugly, even if I have to hear it, I think we can figure out what to do." She said okay in a small voice. She told me they had gotten back together in November of 2022, when we were a year and a half into our relationship. She said she had run into him at a conference in Chicago, which I now know was the same conference she had lied about going to. She said the moment she saw him she realized she had made a mistake ending things. She said they talked. She said they slept together the next night. She said they texted every day after that. She said they had a system. They texted in the morning. They texted in the evening. They talked on Sunday nights when I was at my brother's watching football. She said it was emotional, mostly. She said they had only slept together 4 times in 2 years. She said that as if it made it better. I said, "Did you love him?" She said, "I thought I did." I said, "Did you love me?" She said, "I did love you. I think I always loved you too." I said, "How does that work?" She said, "It doesn't. It wasn't supposed to. I was going to end it before the wedding. I was going to break up with you and tell you the truth and let you go. But then I got engaged and everyone was so happy and I couldn't do it. I couldn't be the bad guy." I said, "So instead you became the liar." She cried. She said, "Yes. I want to tell you, before this goes any further, that this was the conversation that ended it for me. Not because she lied. Not because Lucas existed. But because she chose, on the day she was supposed to be my wife, to keep lying. She chose to send him a message at 9:14 p.m. telling him not to come because tonight was mine and his. She chose that. She chose the venue deposit over my dignity. She chose the lie over telling me the truth. She chose to let me put a ring on her finger while her other hand was holding a phone with another man's heart in it. There is no version of love that survives that. There is no therapy that fixes that. There is no amount of counseling that undoes the fact that she looked me in the eye at an altar and said I was the only person she had ever trusted with her whole heart and meant it for one of us and not for both of us. I am a person who was at an altar that day. I am a person who believed those words. I am a person who is no longer sure that any words mean anything at all. I left her parents' house that evening around 7 p.m. I drove home. I sat on my couch. I drank a beer. I called my Uncle Jack. I told him everything. He was quiet for a long time. He said, "Are you safe?" I said, "I'm safe, I'm at home." He said, "That's not what I mean." "I mean, are you going to be okay?" I said, "Honest answer, I don't know." He said, "Stay on the line with me for 10 minutes. Don't talk. Just stay on the line." I stayed on the line. I cried. I did not cry in front of my brother. I did not cry in front of my father. I cried on the phone with my Uncle Jack because my Uncle Jack is the only man in my life who has ever held MY in a way that didn't make me feel shame about it. I cried for 10 minutes and then he said, "All right. Now go make yourself something to eat. Tomorrow we'll figure out the rest." The next several weeks are part of this story, but I'm going to skip through them because they are not the part of the story I want you to remember. There were lawyers. There were calls to my brother. There were conversations with mutual friends who did not know what to say and so said nothing. There was the moment I had to send her a text telling her I wanted a divorce and her response, which was okay with no emoji, no follow-up, no what about counseling. There was the moment I had to call her parents and tell them I was filing for divorce, and the way her father's voice went flat, the way her mother started crying on the phone and said, "I always worried about this. I want you to know that her parents did not blame me. They did not blame Hannah either. They blamed the situation. They blamed the wedding. They blamed themselves for not asking her more questions. I want you to know that her mother called me 4 months later and apologized to me and cried and said, 'I'm so sorry. I knew something was off and I didn't push.' She was mourning the loss of a son-in-law who remembered her birthday and called her on Mother's Day. I was mourning the loss of a woman I had loved almost more than I had loved anything." We finalized the divorce in May of 2025. The legal part was almost insultingly easy. We had been married for 8 months. Neither of us had children. Neither of us had property the other wanted. The only contested item was the engagement ring. She wanted it back. Her lawyer argued that it was a conditional gift. I let her keep it. I said, "Take it. I don't want to look at it." She took it. I do not know if she sold it. I do not know if she still has it. I do not want to. I moved into a 1-bedroom apartment 2 blocks from my office. I had a futon. I had a microwave. I had a coffee maker that made the kind of coffee Hannah would have called undrinkable. I started working longer hours. I went to the gym every morning. I read a book a week for 3 months straight because my brain needed something to do other than think about her. I want to tell you the name of the book, because the book changed my life. It was called The Body Keeps the Score. It was not about breakups. It was about trauma. It was about the way your body holds on to things your mind tries to forget. I read it in 3 days. I have read it 4 times since. I want to pause here and address the men watching. There are men watching from Ohio and Texas and Arizona and Massachusetts who are sitting in their cars in parking lots right now, pretending they are resting their eyes. I see you. I was you. You are not weak because you hurt. You are not broken because you cannot stop checking her Instagram. You are not less of a man because you cried in the bathroom at work. You are a man who loved somebody who did not love you back the way you loved her. That is not a flaw in you. That is a flaw in her. And the day you stop calling it a flaw in you is the day you start being able to breathe again. I am not bitter. I am working on not being bitter. There are days I am not bitter. There are days I am. I want to be honest with you about that. I had a Thanksgiving where I was not bitter. I had a Thanksgiving where I was. I had a week in January where I was not. I had a week in January where I was. I am not telling you I'm healed. I am telling you I'm working on it. The line between those two things is thick. Now. The story gets complicated here. The story gets complicated because of the man I dated in the spring of 2025. Her name was Hannah. Different Hannah. Different person entirely. I will call her Hannah B. in this story to avoid confusion, but she deserves a real name because what she did for me was important. She and I had met at a coffee shop in April of 2025. She was a physical therapist. She had moved to Cleveland from Philadelphia. She was 32. She had been divorced for 3 years. She had custody of a 6-year-old daughter named Cora. She was, in other words, a woman who had been through something and come out the other side. She did not flirt with me. She did not perform. She did not audition me or test me or evaluate me. She asked me, the 3rd time we had coffee, what I was reading. I told her. She said, I also read that book. Twice. I felt, sitting across from her at that coffee shop, the first feeling I had felt since Hannah Reeves had texted Lucas at 9:14 p.m. that I might be a person worth meeting. I want to tell you the things Hannah B. did that helped me. They were small things. She sent me a text on a Tuesday in May that said, "I am thinking about you today. I don't need a response. I just wanted you to know." That text is on my refrigerator. I keep it there. I keep it there because it is the first piece of evidence I have ever had that someone is capable of loving me without lying to me while they do it. She sent me a text on a Friday in June that said, "I'm at the grocery store. Do you need anything? I'm already in the car." She drove 20 minutes out of her way to bring me eggs and oat milk because I had mentioned, in passing, that I had run out. I told her she didn't have to. She said, "I wanted to." She meant it. I could tell. I could tell because Hannah B. did not lie to me. That sounds like a small thing. I want you to know that after 2 years with Hannah Reeves, who lied to me about everything from toothpaste brand to whether she had ever been in love with me before, the experience of being with a woman who means what she says is so disorienting I had to lie down after the first month. It was like getting vision back after 30 years of not seeing. Everything was too bright. Everything was too clear. Everything was wrong. Wrong in the good way. She did not push me. She did not ask me about Lucas. She did not ask me about the engagement ring. She did not ask me about the wedding dress or the altar or the chalkboard sign at the reception that said HJ Forever in Hannah's handwriting. She asked me what I was reading. She asked me how I was sleeping. She asked me if I had eaten today. She asked me the small questions that real people ask real people and not the kind of performance questions that people who are using you for a venue deposit ask the people they are using. I fell in love with Hannah B. in August. I told her in October. She cried. She said, "I didn't think you'd ever be ready." I said, "I'm not ready. I'm just willing." There's a difference. You taught me the difference. She said, "I didn't teach you anything. You taught yourself." I said, "Maybe. But you didn't lie to me while I was teaching myself, and that means something." She cried more. I cried too. We held each other in her kitchen. Cora came in and asked why we were crying. Hannah B. said, "We are happy crying." Cora said, "Happy crying is the best kind." She is 6 years old and she already understands the world better than Hannah Reeves ever did. I want to stop here and acknowledge what I have not yet told you. There is an ending to this story. There is a final piece. I have been building toward it. The final piece is the phone call I received in November of 2025 from Hannah Reeves herself. I have not told you about that call. It is the call where she told me what she had done, what Lucas had done, what had happened to her after me. It is the call that, in many ways, gave me permission to close this chapter of my life. I am going to tell you about the call. She called me on a Tuesday afternoon. I was at my desk. My phone rang. The number was from Chicago. I did not recognize the area code. I answered because I have a policy of answering calls from numbers I don't know, because sometimes those calls are important, because sometimes a man is in trouble, because sometimes a woman is in trouble, because the world is bigger than my personal history. "Hi, is this James?" The last time I had heard her voice was in May, when she had called to tell me she had finalized the divorce papers. Her voice had been flat then, the voice of a person going through a process. Her voice now was not flat. Her voice now was small. Brittle. The voice of a person who had been through something that had cracked them open. "James, it's Hannah." I did not say anything. I let her continue. "I know this is out of the blue. I know I'm the last person you want to hear from. I wouldn't have called but I don't know who else to call." I said, "What's going on?" She said, "It's Lucas." I said, "What about Lucas?" She said, "He left me." I want you to sit with that for a moment. A woman who destroyed my life on a Tuesday night in October by confessing to me on a hotel bench that she didn't know if she loved me had called me from Chicago to tell me that her lover had left her. I want you to feel what that does to a person. I want you to feel how it makes me feel right now, 4 years later, that this woman had the nerve, the absolute nerve, to call me to process her own heartbreak. I said, "I'm sorry to hear that." She said, "You don't mean that." I said, "You're right. I don't. What do you want from me, Hannah?" She cried. She cried into the phone. She cried the way a person cries when they are not trying to convince anyone of anything, when they are not performing, when they are simply falling apart in the back of a rideshare on the way to somewhere they do not want to be. She said, "I want to tell you I'm sorry. I have wanted to tell you I'm sorry for over a year. I couldn't figure out how. I tried to write you letters. I tried to send you emails. I wrote 3 apologies and threw them all away. The last one I wrote I burned. I'm telling you this because I want you to know that I have been thinking about what I did. I have been thinking about it every single day. I have not been able to sleep. I have not been able to eat right. I have a therapist now. I have been seeing her for 10 months. She has helped me understand that what I did to you was something I did not have the right to do. I took your trust and I used it as a costume. I wore it to my wedding. I wore it on the dance floor. I wore it at the altar. I wore it for 8 months of marriage and then I took it off and I gave it back to you and you saw that it had been used." She was quiet for a moment. She said, "I have been seeing Lucas for 8 years. I told you that. What I did not tell you is that he was seeing other women the entire time. The entire time. He had 3 other women he was doing this with. He was running a pattern. Not just with me. With all of us. He had told each of us we were the only one. He had told each of us he had never loved anyone like us. He told me he had moved back to Chicago because of me. He told another woman he had moved to New York because of her. He had been in Chicago the entire time. He had a girlfriend for 2 years he called his roommate. He was a predator, James. I was the other woman for 7 years and I didn't know I was the other woman. I was quiet for a long time. Then I said, "What do you need from me?" She said, "I need you to hear me say I'm sorry. That's all. I need you to actually hear it. I have been trying to find a way to say it that doesn't sound like an excuse. I have been trying to find a way to say it that doesn't make it about me. I have been trying to find a way to say it that isn't asking you for forgiveness because I am not asking you for forgiveness. I am asking you to hear me say that I am sorry. I am sorry because I am sorry. Not because I want you back. Not because I want us to be friends. Not because I want anything from you. I want you to know that I am sorry for what I did to you. I want you to know that I understand what I did to you. I want you to know that I understand what I took from you. I took your trust in people. I took your ability to believe a woman when she says she loves you. I took your confidence in your own judgment. I took the version of you who could walk into a room and assume the people in it were honest. I took that man. I am sorry I took him. I was still quiet. I was looking out the window of my office at the Cleveland skyline. I was looking at the lights coming on in the buildings across the way. I was thinking about Hannah Reeves when I first met her, the woman who had asked Reggie how his wife was and remembered his name. I was thinking about the woman who had cried at the altar and held my brother's hand when he gave the toast. I was thinking about the woman who had ordered me a slice of life birthday cake on my 30th birthday and written the best is yet to come in frosting. I was thinking about the woman I had loved. The woman I had not known. The woman I had known completely. The woman who had been both of those every minute of our relationship. I was thinking about how she had said I don't know when I asked her if she loved me. I was thinking about how she had said venue deposit. I was thinking about the failed IUIs and the hormones and the injections and the nights I had sat in the car crying. I was thinking about the morning she had come home smelling of cologne that was not mine and said it was a coworker. I said, "I hear you." She said, "What?" I said, "I hear you say you're sorry. I accept that you're sorry. I am not forgiving you. Forgiveness isn't something I have to give you. Forgiveness is something you give yourself. But I hear you, and I accept that you are sorry, and I want you to know that you no longer have a hold on me. Whatever part of my life you still had a hold on, you don't have it anymore. You let go of it when you texted Lucas from my wedding. I've been letting go of it slowly ever since. But today, on this phone call, I'm letting go of the last of it. I'm done with you, Hannah. Not in a mean way. In a finished way. She cried harder. She said, thank you. I said, don't thank me. Don't call me again. Don't text. Don't write. Don't try to find me through a friend. Don't try to send a message through your mother. Don't. I'm asking you not to. I have a life I'm building and you don't get to be part of it. You don't get to process your guilt on me. You have a therapist for that. She said, okay. I said, I wish you well. Genuinely. I hope you heal. I hope you become the kind of person who doesn't do this to another human being. But I am not your person anymore. I haven't been for a long time. I hung up the phone. I sat in my office for an hour. I did not move. I looked at the skyline. I thought about Hannah Reeves and about the wedding dress and about the text and about Hannah B. And about Cora and about my Uncle Jack's voice on the phone telling me to stay on the line for 10 minutes and not talk. I thought about all of those things at once and not one of them made me want to cry. I want to tell you that. I thought about them and I did not cry. That was the first time in 12 months I had thought about Hannah Reeves without crying. I want you to know the day. It was November 18, 2025. I called my Uncle Jack after I sat in the office. I told him about the call. He said, how do you feel? I said, I feel like I closed the door. He said, good. I said, what if she calls again? He said, she won't. I said, how do you know? He said, because she heard you. You told her who you are. People who hear who you are come back different. People who don't understand what you said will call you 100 times. People who understood will not. He was right. She did not call again. She did not text. She did not write. She did not try to find me through her mother. She did what I asked. I am telling you this story because I want you to know there is an after. There is a moment when the wound stops being a wound and starts being a scar. The scar will always be there. You will always feel it. You will always know what shape it is. But it will stop being the first thing you feel when you wake up in the morning. It will stop being the thing that makes you check your phone 60 times a day. It will stop being the thing that makes you sit in your car in a parking lot pretending to rest your eyes. There is an after. I also want to tell you this story because I want you to know that the man you are right now, even if you are sitting in the dark with a beer and crying because the woman you married just told you she didn't know if she loved you, even if you are sitting in a one-bedroom apartment with a futon and a coffee maker and a phone that is still showing her name on the lock screen, even if you are sitting in your brother's passenger seat asking him to take you home, I want you to know that the man you are right now is a man who still has value. The man you are right now is a man whose story did not end at that altar. The man you are right now is a man who is going to wake up one day in November of some year and realize he has not thought about her for a week. That day will come. I promise you it will come. You can't see it from where you're sitting. I couldn't see it from where I was sitting in October of 2024. I am telling you it's there. I'm telling you I am living proof of it. A few things before we close this one out. First, if you're watching this and you suspect what I suspected, I am asking you to please stop pretending. I am not asking you to be a private investigator. I am not asking you to break into anyone's phone. I am asking you to stop lying to yourself. The feeling you have is real. The patterns you are seeing are real. The thing in your stomach that is telling you something is wrong is real. You are not crazy. You are not paranoid. You are noticing. The bravest thing you can do is stop pretending you didn't notice. I pretended. I let the love of my life walk down an aisle toward me with another man's cologne still on her wrist. Don't be me. Second. If you are a friend of a person who is being lied to, and you know, I am asking you to please stop protecting the lie. I know it is uncomfortable to be the messenger. I know it feels like you are betraying your friend by telling the truth. You are not. Your friend is betraying your friend by living the lie. You are honoring your friend by refusing to be part of it. Marcy knew. Heather knew. Becca knew. Jenna knew. None of them told me. I cannot tell you how much I would have given to have one of them pick up the phone and say, "James, she's seeing someone else." That phone call would have saved me 18 months of my life. That phone call would have saved me a wedding dress and a venue deposit and a piece of me that I have not yet gotten back. Third. If you are the person doing the lying. I do not have a lot to say to you directly because you will probably never watch this video. The people who lie do not watch videos like this. They are not interested in understanding what they did. They are interested in understanding how they got caught. But on the chance you are watching, I am asking you to think about the man who went to fertility appointments with the woman who was hiding birth control in her drawer. I am asking you to think about the man who held her hand while she cried at the altar because she loved him and was also texting another man about how much she loved him. I am asking you to think about the man's brother, who drove an hour at midnight to pick him up from a hotel because his wife had said I don't know when he asked if she loved him. I am asking you to think about those people. I am asking you to do better than you have been doing. I am asking you, gently, to please stop destroying good men. Fourth. If you are Hannah Reeves, and I think you might, somehow, end up watching this, I do not hate you. I have spent the year since the wedding doing the work of not hating you. There are days I fail. There are days I succeed. I want you to live your life. I want you to figure out why you did what you did. I want you to think about me once in a while, and remember that I was a good man. I was a good man and you destroyed me because you could and because I let you. She did hear me. Lucas came back into the picture in 2025. Hannah B. told me about this through a friend. Lucas had apparently heard from one of his other exes that I had made a statement about him online. I had not. I had never mentioned Lucas by name. I had never mentioned Hannah by name on this channel. But rumors travel. Lucas reached out to me, briefly, in January of 2026. He sent me a message through Instagram. He said he wanted to clear the air. I did not respond. I did not respond because Lucas is a man who has done to multiple women what he did to me through Hannah, and I am not interested in clearing any air with him. I am interested in him not contacting me. He did not contact me again. I am telling you this so you know that the story did not end at the fountain. The story did not end at the venue. The story did not end at the hotel. The story did not end at the kitchen floor or the office phone call or the moment Hannah Reeves told me about Lucas's other women. The story ended when I called my Uncle Jack on November 18, 2025, and told him I had closed the door, and he said, "Good." The story ended there. The story ended when I chose, on a Tuesday afternoon, to stop being a man who was being lied to and to start being a man who was done. I want to leave you with one last thing. Hannah B. and I are engaged now. We are getting married in June of 2026. We are getting married at the Marrow Hill Vineyard. Yes, that vineyard. The same one. I asked the owner if she would let me back. She said yes. She said, "I don't think the building has feelings but I am happy for you." I asked Hannah B. to marry me on a Tuesday in January 2026. I did not bring 42 roses. I brought one. She said yes before I finished the question. She grabbed me by the collar and pulled me up and kissed me in front of her daughter. Cora clapped. The sunset outside the kitchen window was exactly the color I had hoped for. I cried. I cried because I was about to marry a woman who meant what she said. I cried because I had been given a second chance at the thing Hannah Reeves had tried to permanently take from me. I cried because my Uncle Jack came to my office that night and brought me a bourbon and said, "I'm proud of you, son. I am not telling you this story to make you feel sorry for me. I am telling you this story because there are men and women watching right now who are exactly where I was in October of 2024. They are sitting at an altar in their mind. They are holding a phone. They are reading a text that explains everything their entire relationship has never explained. They are wondering if they will ever breathe again. They are wondering if they will ever trust another human being again. They are wondering if the wound will ever stop being the first thing they feel when they wake up. The wound will heal. Not today. Maybe not this month. Maybe not this year. But it will heal. And the day it heals will not be a celebration. It will just be a Tuesday afternoon in some November, sometime after the worst has happened, when you realize you have not thought about her for a week. It will be a Tuesday afternoon in some November when you are sitting in your office looking at a skyline and you realize you are not sad. You will not even be happy. You will just be a person again. A person who can be met by another person. A person who is willing to believe again. A person who knows what a text on a refrigerator means. A person who knows what it feels like to be told, "I am thinking about you today." I don't need a response. I just wanted you to know. That will be enough. That will be more than enough. That will be everything. Press subscribe. Press the bell. Hit the like. Leave a comment with what you took away from this one. If it was hard to get through, leave that too. I read them all. I want you to know I read them all. I love you. I mean it. I have learned what it means to mean it. I learned it from a man named Uncle Jack who stayed on the line with me for 10 minutes and told me not to talk. I learned it from a woman named Hannah B. who left me in her kitchen crying and did not try to fix it. I learned it from a 6-year-old named Cora who said happy crying is the best kind. I learned it from a man I used to be who woke up one morning and decided he was done being a man who was being lied to. I love you. I mean it. Thank you for being here. Let me go back further. Let me go back to the meeting in October, because that first meeting matters. She had asked Reggie how his wife was before she had asked my name. I want to be very clear with you about that. She had walked into the elevator that morning, like she did every morning, and she had said to Reggie, "How is Beverly this week? Did the blood pressure come down?" And Reggie had said, "It did, Hannah, thank you for asking." And she had said, "Good." And she had gotten into the elevator. And I was on the elevator with her. I had been on the elevator with her for 3 months and I had never noticed that she asked Reggie about his wife by name. I had been so busy looking at her cardigan that I had missed the most important thing about her, which was that she remembered people's people. That is who I married. A woman who remembered people's people. And I still think that was who she actually was. The version of her who remembered Reggie's wife was the real version. The version of her who texted Lucas from my wedding altar was the costume she wore when nobody was watching. I want to spend a few minutes on the wedding planning, because the wedding planning was where I should have seen the most. The wedding planning was where the lies had to live inside the same house as the truth and come out looking the same. The wedding planning was the pressure cooker that made the deception visible if you knew where to look. Most people didn't know where to look. Our first big argument was about the music. I wanted a band. She wanted a DJ. She won. The way she won was interesting. She won by saying, with great tenderness, that she wanted our first dance to be choreographed because she had been taking secret ballroom lessons for 2 months so she could surprise me. I believed her. I now know she was not taking ballroom lessons. There was no surprise for me. There was only a DJ Becca needed to place and Hannah packaging the lobbying as a gesture of love so I would not know she was lobbying. That is the kind of person I was marrying. A woman so skilled at packaging that the packaging itself was a lie. The invitations were a worse moment. She handwrote 80 of them. 80. She sat at her parents' dining room table for 3 weekends with a calligraphy pen and 1,000 thank you cards from her mother's flower shop, and she wrote out the names and addresses of 80 of our closest friends and relatives. She wrote them in cursive that actually looked like calligraphy. She had lovely handwriting. The envelopes looked like they belonged on a movie set. People still talk about those invitations. People still post pictures of them. My aunt has hers framed in her living room. I have a copy of one in a box in my closet that I have not thrown out. I should have thrown it out. I have not thrown it out because I want to remember that the woman who wrote those invitations loved me at least a little. She loved me enough to spend 3 weekends on her handwriting. That cannot be a lie. That cannot be entirely a lie. I sat next to her on one of those weekends. I sat on a chair behind her and watched her write. I brought her tea. I rubbed her shoulders. I said, "You don't have to do all of them yourself. People don't care if the handwriting is perfect." She said, "I care. This is our wedding. I want the people we love to get the most beautiful invitation they have ever received." That is what she said, and I watch myself as I write these words and I see that I cannot tell whether she meant them or not. I cannot tell. That is what she did to me. She made me unable to tell the difference. The dress. I want to tell you about the dress because the dress is where Hannah Reeves' gift for performance became something I will remember for the rest of my life. She picked it out in February of 2024. She tried on 40 dresses. 40. I went with her to 17 of those appointments. The woman who owns the boutique where she ended up buying it told me later that Hannah had visited her shop 11 times. 11 times. Hannah told me she had visited 3 times. The boutique owner told me that she had visited 11 times because she had been having trouble deciding between the dress she had booked with us and a more expensive dress that Lucas had told her she deserved. I want to sit with that detail for a moment. Lucas had opinions about her wedding dress. The man she was texting at 9:14 p.m. on the night of our wedding had opinions about her wedding dress. He had opinions about the dress she wore down the aisle to me. I want to think about that. I want to think about what kind of man has opinions about the dress a woman wears to marry another man. There was the bachelorette party. There was the bachelor party. There was the rehearsal dinner. There was the rehearsal itself where I stood at the altar and held her hands for 30 seconds while the officiant walked us through the structure of the ceremony. There was a moment in that 30 seconds when I looked at her and she looked at me and I thought I had never seen another human being as clearly as I was seeing her. I thought I knew her. I thought I knew her the way a man knows the woman he has lived with for 2 years and loved for 2 years and fought with and made up with and held through 4 failed IUIs. I thought the rehearsal was a formality. I thought the rehearsal was a play where we both knew our lines. I thought the play was real. The play was not real. The play was a play. The play was 2 people reading lines for an audience that did not know what was happening behind the curtain. The wedding morning, I want to explain one more time, was perfect. The morning was the kind of perfect that only exists once in a person's life. My brother and I had our bourbon. The sun came up over Cleveland in a gold color that I cannot describe and I will not try to describe because if I describe it I will cry and I am trying not to cry. The suit fit. The shoes fit. The cuff links were silver because she had picked them out for me as a wedding gift and they were at the hotel in a small black box with a note that said, "Wear these because they match my something blue." I read that note 100 times. I keep that note in the same box as the invitation. I keep them both. I will probably keep them both for the rest of my life, because I am a man who carries things and I have not yet figured out how to put them down. The ceremony began. The officiant was a woman Hannah had picked from a website. Her name was Linda. Linda was in her 60s and had a calm voice and a habit of looking at both of us before she said anything important. She had us say traditional vows first. I said them. Hannah said them. Then she asked Hannah if she had written her own vows. Hannah said she had. I had not written mine. I had been planning to wing it. I am not a man who writes things down unless I have to. Hannah was the writer of the family. Hannah wrote the thank you cards. Hannah wrote the Christmas card every year and made me sign it even though I never knew what to say. Hannah had a pad of paper in her clutch that she had been using for the vows. I watched her pull the pad out and unfold it. I watched her hold it with both hands. I watched her look down at it and then back up at me. The vows she read me, the ones I cried at, were on that pad. We said I do. We kissed. We walked down the aisle. We got in the car. We got to the venue. I want to tell you what the venue looked like because she picked it. The vineyard. The lights. The brick. The vines. The way the lanterns hung like fruit from a tree I didn't recognize. She had been planning this for 13 months. She had visited the venue 11 times herself. The owner, Margot, told me later that she had visited 11 times. 11 times to make sure every detail was perfect. 11 times to make sure every candle was in the right place. 11 times to make sure the seating chart was exactly the way she had drawn it. I want you to know something about seating charts. Seating charts are the most political documents in a wedding. A seating chart is where you decide who is important to you and who is less important and who can be in the same room with whom. Hannah had spent hours on that seating chart. Hours. She had argued with her mother about where her aunt would sit. She had argued with Marcy about where Marcy's boyfriend would sit. She had cried once because we could not fit everyone we loved at one table. I had held her through that crying. I had said, "It's okay. We can do a second table." She had said, "It isn't about tables. It's about love." She had said that. She had said it's about love. While her seating chart was a careful architectural plan for a wedding that would include the man she was texting at 9:14 p.m. as an uninvited almost guest. She could just keep loving me and keep doing the other thing and never let the two things collide. The marriage lasted 8 months. I want to tell you about the marriage, because the marriage was where I learned things about her I would have preferred not to learn. I learned that she did not like the way I chewed. She had told me for the first 6 months of our relationship that the way I chewed was cute. After we were married for 3 months, she told me it was loud. I want to bring this up because it is a small thing and small things are where the damages live. I learned that she did not like to be touched when she was reading. I had not known that. I had been touching her. I had been rubbing her shoulders while she read in bed. After we were married, she flinched when I did it. She said, "I'm sorry, please don't." I stopped. I felt small. I felt like I had taken up too much space in her life. I learned that she did not like to share the covers. She had told me, when we were dating, that she liked to share the covers because it was cozy. After we were married, she pulled the covers to her side of the bed every night and I woke up cold. I learned that she did not like my brother very much. She had told me, when we were dating, that he was one of her favorite people. After we were married, she asked me why I talked to him on the phone so much. I learned, over and over, that the woman I had married was not the woman I had dated. Or, more precisely, that the woman I had dated was the woman I had married, but a lot of her was a costume and the costume was getting thinner by the month. I learned, in the 7th month of marriage, that she had kept all the vacation photos from her trip to Greece in a folder on her phone called Athens. She had told me there was no folder. She said the photos were in the cloud. I looked at the folder one night while she was in the shower. There were 1,247 photos. 1,247 of them were from our trip. 6 of them were from a trip she had taken to Athens alone in 2022 that she had told me was a work conference. The 2022 trip to Athens, I now know, was her first trip to see Lucas after the breakup. It was not a work conference. It was her first trip to be with him. She had spent 4 days in Athens with him and come home and told me she missed me, and we had watched a movie on the couch that night and she had fallen asleep on my shoulder and I had thought I was the luckiest man in the world. I want to read a few of them to you because they matter. A man named David wrote, I lost 10 years to a woman who had 3 other men I never knew about. I am 51. I am starting over. Thank you for telling me I am not alone. A man named Marcus wrote, I sat in my car in a Sam's Club parking lot for 3 hours reading your last story. I cried. I want to thank you for letting me cry. Men need more places to cry. A man named Felipe wrote from Colombia in broken English, I am 29. I am 6 months into the betrayal. I have never felt this alone. You make me feel less alone. I want to thank David, Marcus, and Felipe. I want to thank anyone who has ever written a comment on any of my videos. I want to thank the people who have written me emails telling me their stories. I want to thank the people who have subscribed at the lowest tier because that is what they can afford. I want to thank the people who have pressed the bell icon. None of this is necessary. None of this is required. But all of it matters. The marriage ended in May. I want to walk you through those last weeks because those last weeks are where I made the decision that would define the rest of my life. There was the late-night conversation where she came home from dinner with Marcy smelling of a cologne that wasn't mine. There was the conversation where I asked her where she had really been and she said, I'm sorry, I lost track of time at a coworker's birthday. I did not believe her. I told her I did not believe her. She did not try to convince me. She just went into the bathroom and closed the door. There was the conversation where I asked her if she still loved Lucas and she said, I don't want to talk about Lucas. There was the conversation where I said, if you don't want to talk about Lucas that tells me everything. There was the night I slept on the couch. There was the night she slept on the couch. There was the morning we sat at the breakfast table and neither of us had coffee because neither of us knew how to make coffee for the other person anymore. There was the morning she said, I think we should talk about what we're doing. There was the morning I said, I think we should stop pretending there's anything left to talk about. I want to tell you one more story. I want to tell you about a conversation I had with my father in November of 2024. 2 months after the wedding. 2 months after the discovery. I drove up to my dad's house in Ashtabula. He is 73. He drinks instant coffee because he thinks Starbucks is a scam for people who lost their fathers. I sat at his kitchen table and I told him about Hannah. I told him about Lucas. I told him about Chicago. I told him about the venue deposit. I told him about the fertility appointments. I told him I was getting divorced. He listened. He did not interrupt. When I was done, he said, Are you okay? I said, No. He said, Do you want me to drive down there and talk to her? I said, No, Dad, you don't drive at night anymore. He said, I would if I had to. I said, I know you would. That's why I love you. He poured me another cup of instant coffee. He said, I have been married 4 times. I have lost 2. I have buried 1. I am not qualified to give you marriage advice. But I will tell you this, the woman you marry is not the woman you divorce. The woman you divorce is something else. And you have to be okay with the fact that you are going to have to know both of them. I am going to close out this part of the story now. I am going to ask you to do one thing before I close out. I am going to ask you to go to the comments section right now and tell me, in 2 sentences or less, who you would have called if you had been me. Not who would have helped. Not who would have given good advice. Who would you have called? Tell me. I want to read those comments. I want to read those comments because I am interested in knowing who you would reach for when everything you built came down. I love you. I will see you in the next one.